Thank you for joining us, Professor Edward Goldring. And then you are going to discuss about quiet changes in daily life of North Korean. I think it's the commoners and more like, the normal people. And then we are grateful, to have you today. And then the floor is all yours.
Well, thanks very much for inviting me and for the quick introduction. And thanks to the Yonsei University Research Team and the Ministry of Unification for organising and commissioning this. Okay, so obviously I'm presenting in English and I apologize for not presenting in Korean, but it's a work in progress, ongoing struggle. Okay, so I'm a lecturer in political science specializing in comparative politics at Melbourne. Just for anyone who's watching and not familiar, I work on comparative autocracy and have a particular interest in North Korea. And the main topics I'm working on are purges and succession, and the QR code on screen links to my personal website if you're interested in reading a bit more about the projects I've published or am currently working on. Okay, so then to summarize what I'll cover today, I was asked to discuss two questions. The first is about who is currently more beneficial to Kim Jong-un, relating to two family members in particular. The second question is whether anyone is immune to purges in North Korea. And the third is of my own choosing, and this is where the management of elites in North Korea, including under Kim Jong-un, is driven by concerns about a coup. And so I'll take each of these three questions in turn. So turning then to the first question of who is currently more beneficial to Kim Jong-un, Kim Yo-jong or Kim Joo-ae. So I think we first need to think about, well, what does beneficial actually mean? So when we say this is beneficial for Kim Jong-un, what are we talking about? So in comparative autocracy and in the study of political leaders more generally, think of selectorate theory, for instance, if you're familiar with it, there's this assumption that autocrats want to stay in power. But as authors like Tom Popinski and Adam Przeworski have argued, autocrats do so much more than stay in power. They invariably also have certain policy goals that they want to achieve. And of course, these can be about aiding survival. So, for instance, a dictator might want improved economic performance because this improves the standard of living for the general population. But that also might make the population be less restless and then help with their survival prospects, for instance. And improved economic performance can, of course, also provide greater resources for the dictator to distribute as private goods. But many dictators also have policy goals that they want to achieve for the end results of those policy goals. So lots of dictators care about the legacies that they leave behind. And so when we're talking about beneficial to Kim Jong-un, I assume that other individuals within the North Korean regime can provide benefits to Kim Jong-un in terms of, one, helping him survive in office, delivering stability, and two, actually helping him deliver certain policies that he wishes to deliver. In terms of stability, Kim Joo-ae provides benefits as if she is, as it appears, being prepared to be Kim's successor. So succession has long been thought to be a thorny problem for autocratic regimes to solve, but they're getting better at it in more recent years. So North Korea has, of course, pulled it off twice in 1994 and then more recently in 2011 with the transition from Kim Jong-il to Kim Jong-un. So public appearances by Kim Joo-ae alongside her father, Kim Jong-un, in particular at military events, have led to speculation that she's being groomed as his successor. We should note that this might not be the case, and that this could in fact be part of something else. So it could, for instance, be part of an image building campaign to portray Kim Jong-un as a loving father, both of his immediate family and also his broader family of the North Korean people. But certain terms that have been used to refer to Kim Joo-ae in North Korean propaganda indicate that Kim Joo-ae's status is being elevated within the regime to that of a potential future leader. So research on comparative autocracy has shown that identifying a future leader can help stabilize the regime because this stops elites fighting over who the next successor will be. Now, identifying a daughter is unusual. It's normally a son. Autocracies are patriarchal organizations generally. But identifying a child as successor is especially helpful because then the incumbent, in this case Kim Jong-un, doesn't have to fear the future successor overthrowing him because the successor can afford to wait by virtue of being significantly younger than the incumbent. And this practice, known as primogeniture, was of course widely practiced in particular in pre-modern monarchical Europe. And so this is how dictators resolve what's known as the crown prince problem. If autocratic regimes cannot solve the problem of succession, then they collapse. So Kim Jue appears hugely beneficial to Kim Jong-un because she aids stability through her possible designation as North Korea's future leader. However, I would argue that Kim Yo-jong is currently even more beneficial to Kim Jong-un. As vice director of the Korean Workers' Party's propaganda and agitation department, Kim Yo-jong appears to have played an important role in organizing major public events in North Korea, devising projects that aid Kim Jong-un's personality cult, and often acting as the North Korean regime's attack dog towards South Korea. But Kim Yo-jong is not just beneficial for Kim Jong-un in terms of policy. Although our inferences are based on limited evidence, Kim Jong-un's health appears to be suboptimal. Visible health indicators, including the amount he smokes, his family's history of major heart issues, his weight, and his disappearance for 2 months in April 2020, all point to the idea that Kim Jong-un suffers from poor health. To be clear, I'm not saying that I expect Kim Jong-un to die from a heart attack in the next few weeks, months, or possibly even years, but this is a possibility that we should consider, as he likely also has. Now, we don't know exactly how old Kim Jue is, but if Kim Jong-un died in, say, the next 5 to 10 years, even if Kim Jue has been designated as North Korea's next leader, her young age means that she'd almost certainly need a ward to help her lead the country due to her young age. As an albeit female member of the Kim family in a patriarchal world, Kim Yo-jong is arguably best positioned to do that. There is, of course, an alternative argument that Kim Yo-jong poses a problem for Kim Jong-un. Sorry, there's an argument that Kim Yo-jong poses a problem for Kim Jue, in that if Kim Yo-jong took on the role of sort of ward to Kim Jue, that she might not want to relinquish this sort of power behind the throne, just as Kim Jong-il apparently feared about Jang Song-taek helping Kim Jong-un before he died. But it's worth noting that Kim Yo-jong does not have anything like Jang Song-taek's checkered history, given that Jang was purged on multiple occasions under Kim Jong-il, most notably in 2004. So overall, I believe that Kim Yo-jong is currently more beneficial to Kim Jong-un because if Kim Yo-jong can be trusted from Kim Jong-un's perspective, she provides not only policy support in the invaluable area of propaganda, but she also aids the regime's stability by increasing the likelihood that the leadership of the regime can continue within the Kim family, even in the event of Kim Jong-un suffering an early death due to health complications. So the second question of whether there is a group of North Korean elites that is immune to purges. Now, for clarity, I'm answering this question in the context only of the Kim Jong-un era. But to preview my answer, yes, I think elites with technical expertise related to the missile and nuclear programs could be immune to purges, but this being North Korea, even that comes with a caveat. So in a book manuscript that's currently under review, I argue that there are 3 primary reasons why dictators purge elites. First, dictators do this to consolidate power. For reasons that I'm happy to talk about at length afterwards, dictators are generally in a strong position when they first come to office. At this time, they often purge elites to consolidate power. They typically target powerful military elites at this time because these guys tend to be the perpetrators of coups. And so dictators take advantage of their temporarily strong position when they first come to power vis-a-vis the military. In North Korea under Kim Jong-un, think of Kim being able to purge Vice Marshal Lee Yong-ho in July 2012, for instance. Second, dictators purge elites to punish them for disloyal behavior. This is most often seen following a failed coup attempt, which helps explain why there's strong such a strong association between coup attempts and purges. Dictators have to purge the perpetrators of failed coup attempts lest they try to unseat the dictator again. Amazingly, there are actually examples of dictators failing to purge the perpetrators of failed coup attempts and then the perpetrators launching a second coup attempt, which is quite frankly baffling, but it has happened. And then also dictators need to send a signal to other elites that challenges against them will not be tolerated. So you can think of them as like an act of micro-deterrence within elite politics in an autocracy. So we've not seen this type of purge, as far as I can tell, under Kim Jong-un, since to our knowledge, he's not faced a coup attempt. But Kim Il-sung's purges in the aftermath of the Second Conference of the Korean Workers' Party in 1956, targeting the Kapsan faction, are arguably a good example of this. We could also point to purges in the mid-90s, potentially related to the Frunze Academy incident under Kim Jong-il. Third, dictators purge elites to scapegoat them as a form of blame shifting. So the aim of this type of purge is to improve a dictator's popular opinion of wrong. In North Korea, the clearest examples of this have occurred under Kim Jong-il, with Kim Jong-il purging civilian elites, including So Kwan-hee, who served as the Minister of Agriculture, and this was to blame So Kwan-hee for the famine. And then, even more notably, Kim Jong-il purged an official called Park Nam-gi, finance minister, and Park Nam-gi was purged in response to the disastrous currency devaluation towards the end of 2009. So, as I mentioned, these arguments are from a book manuscript that's currently under review. And in the concluding chapter, I apply the logic of these arguments to three dictators, including Kim Jong-un, to try and predict who might be purged in future. In Kim Jong-un's North Korea, I predicted the most likely type of purge would be scapegoats, purges of civilian elites. Since Kim Jong-un has consolidated power, and a coup attempt is very unlikely. And indeed, in the last few weeks, there have been reports of Kim Jong-un blaming officials, saying irresponsible officials would be punished for the North Korean state's response to damage caused by the floods. We can also apply these arguments to consider who is likely not at risk of purges in Kim Jong-un's North Korea. So I argue that officials associated with the missile and nuclear programs are unlikely to be purged since, but specifically I'm talking about senior officials in North Korea's General Directorate of Missiles. So purging these officials would not provide any benefit in terms of consolidation. They're unlikely also to be disloyal and launch a coup attempt because they're generally treated comparatively well within North Korean standards. And they're unlikely to be scapegoated even if things go wrong, because this wouldn't aid popular views of Kim Jong-un within the country. And also, because failed missile tests do not have negative effects on Kim Jong-un's standing among the people. Kim has also demonstrated a respect for technical expertise, especially in this area. When missile launches have not gone to plan, Kim has shown patience. He seems to understand that the field of missile development, nuclear weapons, this is an extremely complex area. And he celebrates, as the picture shows, joyously with officials, heralding their accomplishments when they make advances, i.e. hold successful missile launches. He's even held banquets for scientists and publicly saluted those behind successful missile launches. Now, of course, I said there was a caveat, and that caveat is that if any of these officials did display disloyalty, such as participating in a challenge to Kim Jong-un, then of course they would be purged. But for reasons that I'll discuss next, this is unlikely. So overall, officials who play key roles in the regime's nuclear and missile programs are as close to being immune to Korea. Finally, then, the third question I'm discussing today is whether management of elites in North Korea, including under Kim Jong-un, is driven by concerns about a coup. Now, of course, there aren't many good pictures about a coup in North Korea, so I had to go for Kangchol-pi, which if you haven't seen, I thoroughly recommend if you want to think what a coup might look like in North Korea. So one assumption underpinning my responses to the two questions above is that the Kims, including Kim Jong-un, worry about the possibility of a coup. In the context of succession, and this is something that underpins research in the field of comparative autocracy, as dictators grow old or become visibly unwell, the likelihood of a coup increases. Similarly, if we're talking about purges, as I have, research on purges also assumes that dictators' fear of and their responses to coup attempts affects their behavior, i.e., it affects whether they fear a coup, affects whether they purge elites. Over the years, however, when I've conducted interviews with experts on North Korean politics in South Korea, whether in government-related think tanks or in academia, this is something that interviewees have often pushed back on, telling me that there's such a minuscule chance, or there's just no chance of a coup in North Korea, that this isn't what guides thinking among previously either among Kim Jong-il or for Kim Jong-un. And this filters through to some academic work. For instance, Taekbin Kim's quantitative analysis of purges in North Korea frames purges as not being about coup threats. Instead, Taekbin Kim argues that purges aim to, and I'm sort of paraphrasing here, increase the efficiency of dictatorial rule, with dictators showing off their superiority and making their subordinates more obedient to the group. In other words, for Taekbin Kim, the idea of purge is to incentivize loyalty. But I would argue that arguments such as these obfuscate the logic of much elite management in North Korea. There's a very low chance of a coup in North Korea. I don't doubt that. But there's a low chance of a coup precisely because the Kims, including Kim Jong-un, have been very concerned with the possibility of one occurring. The Kims coup-proof constantly. They do this both reactively and proactively. Reactively, we've seen purges occur in North Korea, as I discussed, in response to rumored coup attempts, notably in the mid-1950s and the mid-1990s. Proactively, the North Korean regime regularly rotates officials to prevent them developing strong vertical and horizontal relationships between military officials that could aid the occurrence of a coup attempt. The regime also engages in counterbalancing, with leadership of the defense of Pyongyang and the leader's bodyguard being run separately and distinctly from the regular military chain of command. Political officers and security command offers from North Korea's internal military secret police are also embedded in North Korea's regular military, their monitoring activities further diminishing the likelihood. Similarly, Taekbin Kim's argument that I mentioned can be reconsidered in light of this evidence. If purges are about a dictator showing off their superiority to make subordinates more obedient, this is about making obedience more loyal to diminish the likelihood of a challenge, i.e., diminish the likelihood of a coup attempt. To reiterate then, while I completely concur with many experts inside and outside of academia that a coup in North Korea is extremely unlikely, I contend that this is primarily because the Kims, including Kim Jong-un, have been so concerned with the possibility of a coup occurring. Okay, so that brings an end to my prepared remarks. Thanks again, Professor, for the invitation to present, and of course, look forward to any questions.
Thank you for very calm and then very systematic analysis of these three questions. And then I think you started as a very interesting remark. And then our comparative political scientist actually contributed to the more stable authoritarian succession process by our research that you are arguing. You just mentioned that those established literature and accumulating literature on authoritarian succession process might benefit those potential authoritarian leaders to solve the problem of succession politics, which is not very good for us.
No, this thought has
any empirical evidence to support this argument?
Yeah, this thought has crossed my mind many times, right? And of course, Bruce Bueno de Mesquita and Alistair Smith made a whole joke about this when they published their sort of popular book that's the version of selectorate theory, when they called it the Dictator's Handbook to Survival. Essentially, what many comparative political scientists are doing is writing guides for dictators on how to stay in power. I don't have any evidence of whether this is actually true, and if it was, the whole field, we've got a massive moral issue we need to deal with. But it has crossed my mind, and I have wondered whether there is some kind of empirical research we could do on this, involving looking at where does this research tend to get downloaded? Like, is it possible to identify what are they called? The ISPs of
Yeah,
where people download like these articles. And if, for instance, we see them being repeatedly downloaded in headquarters in Beijing, like what are we all doing?
yeah, I think so. I think this is agonizing consequence on comparative political scientists. Even though we study political regime and then political, democratic backsliding, I think one of the become emerged as one of the top the research topic in the comparative among the comparativists. But we our research, the results actually shows we should do this. You shouldn't do that to preventing democratic backsliding. It didn't work. But the other way around, you find the succession problem to serve for the dictators. That type of research results actually benefit the dictators, which is not very good.
I think, in a sort of, to give a more serious response, I think this is something I've been thinking a lot about. And I think, when you read articles or books and it comes to the conclusion and authors think about the implications of their results, I think what we really need to be thinking about is not just theoretical debates that this contributes to, but what are the implications for, pro-democratic policymakers? You mentioned democratic backsliding. I mean, in that field, for instance, I love Laura Gamboa's book on democratic backsliding because it actually provides very sort of clear advice and a template plan for people to follow on if you want to stop democratic backsliders, this is how you can do it, as opposed to if you're a wannabe autocrat and want to engage in backsliding, how do you do it? And so I think we need to think more about implications for pro-democratic policymakers.
But I think it's economic officials at the top or in the middle, and they are very in the very dangerous position to be purged as a scapegoat. I think your theory, consolidation, punishment, scapegoating, make very sense. I would love to read your forthcoming book. And then next question is again, it's about coup. And then you actually showed the Kang Chul-bi, the movie. I think I saw it. I think it's North Korean leaders will hate it about that. And then you just say you want to see one scenario of the say potential coup in North Korean regime. Just watch the film, Kang Chul-bi. Then I think it's the real question to you one more time. This is hypothetical, of course, but you studied, and then I think I studied military coup and then authoritarian turnover and then succession process, and then I think you have many scenarios from the previous cases especially in the modern time. You briefly mentioned about pre-modern monarchical Europe too, so you have a kind of horizon of the last 400-500 years. What is a plausible coup scenario in North Korea right now then, or next 10 years? I think it's many people, I think including myself, it's a coup probability possibility is pretty low in the North Korea right now, and then probably next 5 years or so. We do not predict 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years. But if any, what is the potential and plausible coup scenario in North Korea?
So I completely agree. I think the probability of a coup in North Korea is very, very low in the next 5-10 years. And including even in the scenario I'm going to outline, I still think the probability of a coup is low. But if I had to outline one scenario in which a coup attempt might happen, I think it would be relating to succession. So I think it would be if, say, Kim Jong-un has, say, a stroke or a heart attack, thinking of his father, and if the succession plan to, say, elites in the military starts to become clear that, look, this is going to be a female-centered succession plan based on potentially Kim Jong-il with support of Kim Yo-jong or just Kim Yo-jong, then how do senior male military officials react to this? Be clear, and I'm going to say it again, I still think the probability of a coup is low because I think what autocratic regimes have come to realize is that the most essential thing is that, to use and to speak figuratively, we keep the train on the tracks. And the train here is the North Korean regime. So if they feared that Kim Jong-il or Kim Yo-jong coming to power could lead to the collapse of the North Korean regime and that some of these senior military officials end up in The Hague being tried for war crimes, then I think they want to step in and would consider a coup attempt. But I think they would realize, look, our best chance of keeping the regime intact is to, say, support Kim Jong-il, Kim Yo-jong, whoever is the designated successor, And so that's why I still think the chance of a coup would be low. I've actually just one additional thing. I'm working on a new data set of all successions in the world, but we've so far only collected the data for Asia between the end of the Second World War and 2020.
Mm,
But even looking just at Asia, the regularity of successions over time steadily increases. We started an average of about sort of less than one a year in 1946. And now
mm,
we're sort of getting up to like an average of two a year, which might not sound like much, but is actually, if you think there shouldn't be succession every year, that's actually a very big increase. And at the same time as the frequency of succession, i.e., regular transitions, has gone up, the frequency of irregular leadership transitions, i.e., coups, has like gone in the complete opposite direction. So autocratic regimes are getting better at this. So I
mm.
still think, look, if a coup attempt was to happen, I think that's how it would happen. But I still think it's very unlikely.
So, and then my last question, before I let you go, North Korea has a very interesting intervening variable, very unique factor, nuclear weapons. And then, of course, People's Republic of China and then Russia Federation, they have, their nuclear weapons. And then Pakistan, which is a pretty hybrid regime, back and forth and democracy and military authoritarian regime, has nuclear weapons. But unique, your research and then many comparative political scientists research are on those regime usually weak, and then at least in the highest level is probably middling type of authoritarian regime without nuclear weapon. In a nuclear weapon, enter the nuclear weapon in this the formula, and then what's going to happen?
In terms of the formula of whether we would expect a coup attempt.
Coup attempt, and then elite management, you say?
Yeah. Well, with regard to coup attempts, I mean, we have seen coup attempts in states with nuclear weapons. So we saw a coup attempt, of course, in sort of the end of the Soviet Union. We also have seen, I would argue, we've seen successful coups in Pakistan. So coup attempts and successful coups are not completely absent from states with nuclear weapons. So I don't think this obviates the possibility of them occurring. In North Korea, one could even argue that maybe this is a factor that could increase the likelihood of a coup attempt if they saw, even the more senior, say Kim Yo-jong, if she was to come to power, this is someone whose background, Kim Jong-un, I think, is it Kenji Fujimoto's book that discusses how he was nicknamed early on as like the little general. Like he sort of was always pushed to have sort of some kind of training in the military, and during his grooming for succession, we think he took charge of various military two military events, including the sinking of the Chonnan, to ensure that the military would respond to his commands. Kim Yo-jong, on the other hand, she's a civilian background. She's a party official. She does not have this military training. So maybe the presence of nuclear weapons arguably increases the likelihood of a coup, because if the military don't trust that this is someone who should sort of have overall command of North Korea's nuclear capabilities, maybe that makes them more likely to step in.
So, I mean, this is probably one other, path, for the North Korean regime, to probably, suffer, from the political succession process, very unstable, process. And I think it's nuclear weapons. It's pretty interesting, factor, for the North Korea in every single, the policy, dimension. But I think it's important for the, succession process. And then probably according to your logic, and then we will see Kim Joo-ae in military uniform pretty soon.
Yeah, maybe, or given, I mean, the events she appears at are already generally military missile events. And that sort of, to me, is one of the strongest indicators that she's not just appearing as his daughter to show him as a loving father, that this is leadership training. Of course, I'm not 100% on that, but that to me is an indicator. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if behind the scenes there is some kind of military training that takes place, and maybe we do see her in uniform at some point.
So, and then probably, Kim Joo-ae, become a 2-star or 3-star general in 5 years, and
Yeah.
then 4-star general in 10 years.
Yeah, if she was a academic, she'd be promoted to full professor quicker than the rest of us can dream.
Okay, I think we can probably think that little girl general might emerge the 조선중앙통신, news media footage, pretty soon. I think
Yeah.
this is interesting intellectual practice to think about the possibility of a coup and then stability and instability in the elite management in North Korea. Thank you so much for today.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, and I really enjoyed the Q&A discussion. Yeah, really interesting questions. Thanks.